tonight we're going to do a little bit of a different background, like a different agenda. We're going to talk about all of the things that we've talked about in this past year. So it'll kind of give you guys a sense of the types of topics that we cover as an organization. Let me first introduce myself. So I'm a software developer turned software inventor, now entrepreneur. My hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy, which culminated into creating the Freethinker Institute, where I'm the executive director. And this event is brought to you by the Freethinker Institute, and we're a not-for-profit looking to support and empower members, basically to help people be the best versions of themselves, seek truth, and be fair through transformational personal and professional development. And we have events every Tuesday evening, of which this is one, which cover a wide variety of topics typically not covered in academia or industry. And we have weekly members only events where you can apply for membership to be a part of, where we basically apply practical wisdom into our daily lives. The only real rule is to be polite in the Freethinker Institute. Like, all ideas are welcome and all opinions are welcome, but we do ask people to remain polite. And that includes sort of keeping dispassionate and not getting too emotional about a subject, although passion is great. Not getting overly heated. And I also strongly encourage people, if you disagree with someone, rather than trying to prove them wrong, try asking them why they came to their conclusion. We call that listening to understand in the Freethinker Institute, where we try to listen to other people's perspective and why they came to the conclusions they did. We also want to, because we have a large group, we want to keep comments to 2 to 3 minutes per person, and try to limit to one question at a time when you raise your hand, or one comment at a time when you raise your hand. And if you have more than one, just raise your hand and then lower it and then raise it again, and then we'll put you in line again. That way everybody gets a chance to move through comments and questions as they go through. So that said, I'm going to start off kind of giving like a summary of, I'm going to share an internal Google Doc that we have that keeps track of all of the events that we've scheduled for this year, and it's going to be going backwards. So we're going to start from the bottom and go up because that's kind of how it's organized. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to just give a brief summary of the events that we've covered throughout the year. And then we can open it up for conversation. I don't know how long it'll take me to go through 52 events. I think we've had roughly 52, maybe 50 throughout the year. We might have missed 1 or 2 weeks, but we've had events almost every week this year. And then, we can open it up to conversation, after I sort of present the topics that we've covered. And I'm going to try to give a quick takeaway for as many of the topics as I can of what we learned in that event. So with that said, I'm going to share my screen now. So we kicked off the year with How to Talk to Yourself When Under Stress by Dr. Steibel, Lawrence Steibel, who's a regular author in Psychology Now. And he talked about how when you're stressed out, you can actually look back at, try to think of yourself from a third-party perspective and go, into the future and look back at this time that you're dealing with now and try to keep things in context. He had a bunch of other advice. Unfortunately, we lost the recording for that one. We have recordings of most of these, but not all of them. Some of them were lost to technical glitches. And the recordings that we do have will go up on YouTube over time once we get a volunteer video editor. If anyone wants to be a volunteer video editor, reach out to me or Ellis. Mindful money management, whereas unconventional rules millionaires use. Avoiding negativity was by Dr. Mehta in India. And he had a bunch of techniques for avoiding negativity. Finding truth and developing critical thinking skills was one about where we talked about the 5 intentions and how we can by seeking truth and focusing more on understanding the truth rather than on being right, we can come to the truth more clearly and see things more clearly. And by sharing our ideas transparently and keeping an open mind to new ideas that that might be better versions of the truth than what we currently believe, we can actually come to the truth more effectively than by getting stuck in our confirmation bias. We'll have another event on confirmation bias in this coming year. The science and practice of meditation was done by Himanshu, who's another FTI collaborator. We talked about science versus spirituality. And I basically made the case that science and spirituality are not actually at odds, but that they're complementary, and that science teaches us about objective reality and spirituality is about more seeking wisdom and making better decisions. Although you can use science to make better decisions too. Science is basically a consistent knowledge base, and spiritual beliefs don't have to be a consistent knowledge base. And I actually used something called Gödel's incompleteness theorem to show that logically these two are actually complementary rather than at odds with each other. If anyone wants the essay around that, let me know. It's probably in the reference channel in the online community in Discord. And by the way, I have 3 monitors, so if I'm staring off into the corner, it's not because I don't want to give you guys eye contact, it's because my big monitor is to the left over here. So that's what's going on there. So then how to retire safely as a millionaire at age 65. I talked about savings and investment tips that I use and can basically help even someone that, starts their career at minimum wage in New York City, minimum wage, can retire safely as a millionaire at age 65, making as much money as they did when they retired just from an investment income without working at all. And so that was a pretty cool event. Then we did a Socrates Cafe. I forget what that one was about. When we don't have a specific topic, we'll do Socrates Cafes, which is where we vote on a topic, which if we have more time tonight, we can use the time to vote on the topic to talk about too. We also did Let's Craft an Ideal Economic System, where I basically proposed a version of capitalism, which I called fair capitalism, which is a little bit different than the type of capitalism that we see today, which is a very greed-based capitalism, and tried to propose a more compassionate way of leveraging the strengths of capitalism, but also doing it with from a compassionate perspective. And so we kind of made edits to my essay on that, which is probably, all of these are probably in the reference channel. We also talked about free will. Most of what we talk about at the Freethinker Institute is practical philosophy. Free will, 80% of philosophers agree that we have free will in some form, but 60% of 60% of that 80% says that determinism is true, meaning we don't have libertarian free will, which means that we actually don't, technically have a choice about what we decide. So I actually do think it's an important topic, but it's very academic because most people believe in free will. But it is a fun topic to delve into, and I tried to make a pretty solid case, I think, that we do have libertarian free will, and the implications of that essay are actually pretty wide. And I can go into that if anyone is interested, just ask me later. We talked about financial wellness and how to protect and grow assets. There was a lot around overall financial wellness, being well insured, looking at your cash flows, which was kind of a follow-on onto the how to retire safely as a millionaire presentation. And then we did one on the right ways to do a job search. And I'll bet that no one does all of the things that I taught that day. And that video is up on YouTube for anyone that is job searching. I highly recommend taking a look at it. If you go to the Freethinker Institute YouTube channel, it'll be right there. There's only about 9 videos on there right now. We did another conversation on why simulation theory is irrelevant. So a lot of people find it very intellectually interesting to think that we live in a simulation, but actually I have a pretty good argument that even if we do live in a simulation, the winning course of action is to treat that simulation as if it's reality anyway. So whether or not we live in a simulation becomes totally irrelevant if my argument is right. And anyone that wants the argument, check the reference channel. But if I'm right, whether or not we live in a simulation is totally irrelevant in the first place, because we should treat it as reality, even if it is a simulation. The next one is about community education. Now we're getting into April, and you know, a lot of like what you know, I I met Dr. Neville, um, and he kind of taught me that a lot of what we're doing with the Freethinker Institute is about community education, which is you know, trying to do education outside of industry and academia. And so that's really one of the goals of the FTI, is to create an educational community, and we are an educational not-for-profit, so that we can all learn from each other and create a teaching and learning environment where we can teach and learn from teach each other and learn from each other. And so the next one was, which news is fake news and how do we decide what's true? And that was a workshop where we actually, this was back before Russia had invaded the Ukraine and there was saber rattling going on. And what we did is we looked at news articles from left-wing media, right-wing media, and centrist media, and we divided up into teams, and we extracted the facts from all of the news sources from the left-wing, right-wing, and centrist news, and then we fact-checked anything that sounded suspicious. And it turns out one of those three, I won't say which one, actually had some misinformation in their articles. I encourage people to do this exercise when there's an important subject in the news, is to read right-wing, left-wing, and centrist news, and then fact-check anything that sounds suspicious. I've been doing this ever since the Iraq War. That was when I started doing it. And I found that it's pretty consistent, that you know, there is one side that, you know, everybody omits the truths that are not convenient to their narrative on both the right and the left. And then one of the two makes stuff up. And then the centrist sources don't publish any facts that will make them seem biased towards the left or the right. So no single source has the full picture of the truth. You only get the full picture of the truth by doing all three and looking at all three. And so I thought that, you know, we got a lot of good feedback on that workshop. And I think that, you know, that's part of our critical skills development that we try to do in the FTI. And we're going to do more of that next year. We'll probably talk about formal logic and fallacies, probably as separate sessions for events next year. The next one was Rethinking Happiness, Insights on Mind, Body, and Consciousness. That was, I think, Dr. Mehta. And then we did a Socrates Cafe. And then we talked about climate change, which was really interesting one for me, because I've always been, you know, I listened to the people that I trusted about climate change, but I didn't hear a good, solid argument in defense of climate change that wasn't refuted by the naysayers. And it wasn't until we did this workshop that I actually came up with a definitive argument. And what it turns out is that if you look at Earth's temperature from the beginning of Earth's formation and the temperature fluctuations, we actually happen to be in one of the 10 to 15% coldest periods of Earth's history. And but what it turns out is that if you look at the fastest rising temperature since Earth's formation, it was about 1 degree Fahrenheit would go up in the fastest was 260,000 years roughly. That 1 degree Fahrenheit, the temperature would increase 1 degree Fahrenheit. Well, it turns out it's increased 1 degree Fahrenheit in each of the last 200, in the last 200 years, it's basically increased 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And so this is absolutely drastically the fastest that Earth's temperature has ever gone up since the beginning of Earth's formation, by a, you know, a huge magnitude. And so that made me think, wow, it's really hard to deny that climate change is man-made, you know, when you know those facts. But interestingly, that's not the common narrative. That's not what people talk about. And so I think we took a different approach, and a freethinker approach, to trying to solve that problem. Then we talked about high self-worth and how do you feel the high self-worth that you deserve. And we talked about the fact that if we're trying to be the best version of ourselves, seeking truth and being fair, which we can talk more about what it means to be fair, but you know, generally it's about increasing happiness and decreasing harm, in my opinion. And if we're trying to do those things and we're trying our best to do them, then I think we should feel good about ourselves regardless of where we land. And so I don't think our self-worth should be based on keeping up with the Joneses, whether or not we make a lot of money or have a lot of power. It should be about whether or not we're doing our best to be the best person that we can be. And if we are, I think we should be proud of ourselves for our effort. And we do want to try to see the truth clearly, but that's part and parcel of being the best version of ourselves. We talked about the origins of the universe. I have a rather unique perspective on this, although it does side with the Greeks. So there's a long precedence of eternalism is what it's called, which is saying that the universe has existed eternally. And I have a logical argument that the Big Bang was not the origin of the universe. It's just one of an infinite number of Big Bangs happening throughout the universe. And we just happen to only see the remnants of our Big Bang. That actually aligns really well with the fact that the edges of the known universe are accelerating, which is a very, a thing that there's really no other good explanation for. Dark energy is used to explain why it is, but no evidence that dark energy or dark matter exists has been found. None of it has been directly detected. And so this hypothesis that I have basically explains why the edges of the universe are accelerating, because there's all this mass energy around the rest of the universe that's pulling the edges of our universe to be, gravitationally be pulled away from the center of our universe. Whereas normally you would think energy will dissipate based on entropy. Energy should dissipate and the edges of our universe should be slowing down. But actually my hypothesis explains why it's speeding up, and also why we don't have to be so fatalistic about, what's going to happen way off into the future. According to most physicists, there's either a heat death or a big crunch, but basically the idea is that pretty much all physicists and cosmologists would say that there will eventually be an end to life as we know it. But if my hypothesis is right, there actually won't necessarily be an end to life as we know it. We could just dance across the stars indefinitely. Now this is all stuff that's gonna, not matter for a really, really long time. But then the next question was, which religion is right? And it's as you might guess, it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question, because I would argue that no one religion is right. All of the religions are valuable and offer a lot of wisdom. And I encouraged everybody to learn wisdom from all religions. And if one resonates particularly with someone, sure, feel free to follow it. But it doesn't hurt to learn wisdom from other religions in addition to that, even if there's one that you follow specifically. And so I would argue that we stand to learn from all religions, and that we all benefit from learning from all religions and the wisdom that it teaches. And the other thing is that I basically argued that if a religion, even if it's the one you follow, teaches something that you don't think makes sense, or that you think is not right or unethical, that you don't need to follow that. And we should all ultimately trust our own judgment about what's right and wrong. And I used the example of the Inquisition, where Catholic leaders basically tortured people to try to save their souls. Well, I'll bet that the parishioners, if they hadn't followed those Catholic leaders blindly, knew that that torture was not right, but they said, well, who are we to challenge the religious authorities? And so I would argue that we should all use our own judgment between what was right, what is right, and what's wrong when making our own decisions, regardless of which religion we want to follow, if we want to follow one. And then should drugs be legal? I made an argument that we should actually strive towards a world where drugs are all legal, but that one has to get a license to be able to do a drug. And in order to get that license, you have to prove that you know the health impacts. You have to know, how that drug is going to affect you. And you have to be really well versed, much more than most people who do drugs are today. Probably almost everybody is today, in order to be able to legally do the drug. But I would argue that if someone is well versed in all that, then we should tax drugs and make them legal, and then use those tax revenues to give help to people who are drug addicts. Because even though most drugs are illegal, there's still lots of drug addicts, and there's a lot of stigma associated with it, and people don't always get help because it's illegal. And so I would argue that we would be a more compassionate society making drugs legal in that way, which is a way that I haven't heard proposed by anyone else. We made the case for and against rationalism. I would argue that using reason to understand the world is what is beneficial for all of us. I think we need to find a way to make sense of the world, and ultimately, I tell everybody they should trust their own judgment. I really like. I learned this from the Buddha, who basically said, "Don't believe anything you read from your religious books or read or hear from your religious teachers, including from himself." You should believe what you believe to be true based on your own judgment and wisdom. And so I basically like to follow that and encourage other people to do the same. That's why we're called the Freethinker Institute. And then I made an argument about the humanities being more important now than the hard sciences. And I would argue, just to summarize that argument, I basically said that we're creating more and more powerful weapons, and we're not getting better and better about who is capable of wielding that kind of power. And I think we need to get more knowledgeable in knowing who is capable of wielding what level of power. And that's really where the humanities comes in. And the hard sciences are creating more powerful weapons. And so I would argue we need to get a little better on the wisdom front rather than on the science front. On the knowledge front, I consider knowledge and wisdom two great things to seek, but wisdom helps us make better decisions and knowledge teaches us about the world. The hard sciences are more knowledge based, and the humanities is more about wisdom, or should be more about wisdom. We talked about abortion, and I made a proposal that basically using my essay on free will, saying that non-deterministic decisions constitute free will, that a fetus doesn't actually make non-deterministic decisions until the third trimester. And so I think for me, like, it's not more murder to abort a fetus if it's not making non-deterministic decisions, because it's not yet sentient, right? It doesn't have a soul yet if it's not making non-deterministic decisions. And so for me, that was a different approach to dealing with the moral quandary of whether or not abortion should be legal or not. Then we talked about why lifelong learning is important. We had a panel for that one. We talked earlier about how being the best version of ourselves is like what I propose is actually the meaning of life. And so we all kind of talked about why we felt lifelong learning is important. It increases our sphere of influence. It helps us, acquire knowledge and wisdom. So why not learn? So we made I think a pretty good argument for that. And then forget exactly what living the best life philosophy for you was. I'm gonna skip that one. So and then how to be the person you want to be. So we talked about how to be again, similar theme of how to be the best version of ourselves. Our leadership team member Herb gave a presentation on universal human development accounts, which is like a really cool idea that he has, which is about creating like a slush fund for individual development, so that each person would have the ability to support lifelong learning and development for their growth, which I think the idea would be to fund this publicly and privately. And so it was a cool presentation. We also had a panel on consciousness and had a variety of opinions. I presented that I think consciousness starts from the spirit or the soul, what religions call the soul, and then basically that influences nanotubules in the brain. And there is, consciousness has been traced back, according to peer-reviewed research, to nanotubules in the brain. The only part that I added is that the spirit actually is what's non-deterministically influencing those nanotubules in the brain. And then from nanotubules in the brain, and quantum fluctuations, you can basically trace all the way through to, life as we know it and the decisions that a human being makes. So I tried to add a little bit on to the panel on consciousness. Then we talked about justice and fairness and what they meant to us, and how we can be more fair as human beings. And then we talked about friendship and relationships and relationship development. There are kind of three pillars according to a TEDx speaker, TED Talk speaker on friendship, one of which is having a 5-to-1 positive to negative ratio of interactions with other people. And then the second is to stay in regular touch with the person. And then the third is being vulnerable. And we spent most of this event talking about how to be vulnerable with people, how to know who to trust how much in order to be vulnerable with them, and how to not destroy relationships by being overly vulnerable or burning bridges if you've trusted someone that wasn't worthy of as much trust as you gave them. Then we talked about these are not posted yet. And then we talked about politeness and respectfulness and whether or not they were synonyms, because we did say the one rule of the Freethinker Institute is to be polite. And so we talked about whether or not polite or respectful was the more appropriate term. And we focused on, we kind of, I think, agreed that politeness is the right term. And then the next event, we talked about whether or not people realize that bribery is legal in the US. Bribery is technically legal in the US for politicians and judges. This is from a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, where you're allowed to give as much money to a judge or member of basically any political office in order to get them into a position of power. And you can do so anonymously to everyone but you and them. And then they're allowed to do favors in return for that. Since no one knows about it, they're allowed to do you favors in return. And this is unfortunately not talked about enough, but I think is a really important topic that needs to be talked about more. And I don't think we did to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. So I think that's coming up. We talked about Enneagram by Robin, and she introduced the Enneagram test. And then we did an intro to shamanism by Garrett Jackson. And he's going to do another event in 2023 on doing a shamanic journey, non-drug induced shamanic journey, just to be clear. He doesn't use drugs in his shamanic practice. And then that was an interesting talk about shamanism, which is, apparently the world's oldest spiritual discipline. I don't know what to call it, but it was a fun conversation. And then we did a Thanksgiving celebration. We talked about whether or not our democracy was at risk. I would argue that Citizens United and a bunch of other signs say that our democracy is at risk. We had a great conversation with Musa, who presented on Sufism and the core tenets of Sufism. I always used to say Sufism. It's Sufism, I think. They really resonated a lot with me, but I don't remember them all off the top of my head. We talked about January 6th and whether or not it was justified and what happened in January 6th. And what we know is that Trump supporters had a kill list of Congress people that they wanted to basically execute that day, and that Trump supporters with guns were trying to get past the metal detectors. And Trump was screaming that they should be let in past the metal detectors and saying they're my people, there's nothing wrong with them. They're not going to do anything. But we also have learned that they did actually have kill lists after the fact. We learned that of people that were supposed to be killed that day. And even without guns, on January 6th, we know from accounts of Congress people that the mobs and the Capitol Police, that the mobs got very close to being within the ability to interact with Congress people, in spite of the efforts by the Capitol Police to defend them. We had a holiday celebration last week, and then that brings us on to this week. And then we're going to kick off January with a doozy, which is my tangible plan to end unjust wars, which I hope you guys will come to. And then we're going to have Courtney, who's here, present on MLK Day. And then, we want to do a year in review, but those are a couple of upcoming events. So with that said, I'll kind of leave it open to people to, ask questions, or, if people have topics that they want to talk about. I just wanted to give people a sense of what we covered throughout this past year, because we covered a lot of really interesting topics. If anyone has questions about any of that or anything about the FTI, I'm happy to answer them. And, Ginny, you have your hand up.
Would you consider repeating a couple of these topics again this year?
Yeah,
I missed some of the topics, and I thought, like, how to keep your investment, for example. I that's something I wouldn't mind learning. I don't know much about financial management.
Yeah, the savings and investment one would be great. If we don't have a recording, I'm very open to repeating. If we do have a recording, we're going to get the recording up on YouTube. So definitely reach out to Ellis, and then she can check whether or not we have a recording for a specific event. And any event that we don't have a recording for that's going to make it up on YouTube, I'm happy to repeat.
Right, thank you.
Yep. And actually, I can post the, actually, I don't even know if I have an easy way to copy and paste all that, but hopefully people remember if there were any topics that they wanted to talk about. If anyone wants me to try to copy and paste all that into the chat, I can, but yeah.
Garrett,
Yeah.
I posted, if they go to the Freethinker Institute under events and click on calendar, all the history's there.
Oh, great.
Every
Thanks,
topic
Ella.
we did.
Perfect.
Oh, good. Thank you, Ellis.
You're welcome. Yes, if anybody likes any of these topics that they missed, or if they want a continuation on any of them, you're welcome to suggest that tonight. I'm just adding them all in my Discord list.
Cool. Will.
Thanks, Garrett. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank you. I was just thinking, seeing that list, how much work you've put in, it's just phenomenal. You are a very, very brilliant man. You really are. And you're providing such a wonderful service to so many people. So a heartfelt thank you for that. And
Me too, here.
Acknowledgement of your brilliance.
It's very
Thanks
kind of you,
again.
probably too kind, but I appreciate the sentiment nonetheless.
No,
Your goal is to
very
add value to
specific.
people's lives. And so that's what I'm trying to do. And where I have knowledge and wisdom, or where I think I do, I'm going to share it. And where people agree, they can follow it. And where they don't, that's okay too. At least I tried.
No,
Thank
I'm
you.
in total agreement with Will.
And just, I'm not sure if now's the time to mention it, but on that topic of the origins of the universe, I'm just curious as to what you think about the concept of infinity. If you've considered that, do you believe infinity exists?
Yes, I think that the physical universe is infinite, like in space and mass energy. And that's why, like, a lot of people, I would argue, that's exactly the universe we live in, is an infinitely large universe in both space and mass energy. And so it's hard to fathom infinity. It's taken me decades of like fathoming, like trying to like understand it, to feel like I actually can get my arms around it. Now, finally, like with this essay on the origins of the universe, I feel like I finally have a sense for what infinity is like. But it's a hard concept to wrap your head around. It really is.
Yeah, and I'm thinking if there is no infinity, then there must be a state of absolute nothingness, because beyond infinity would be nothing. which
Well,
means
in
nothing.
fact, that's where the
Yeah.
Greeks came up with the idea of an infinite universe, because they said, well, imagine that you're at the end of the universe and then you shoot an arrow over to the past the edge of the universe. What's there, right? And so it was a very, and they used,
Yeah.
obviously shooting an arrow was a very Greek sort of way of thinking of it, but like, it's true, like, right? Like if you're at the edge of the universe, what's beyond that, right? And the current cosmologists don't have a great answer for that. They don't have a great answer for what is space expanding into when they call space an expansion from the Big Bang. They don't really they don't have a good explanation for that as far as I can tell. They just say it's expanding and we're expected to believe it by blind faith, and I'm not good at believing anything by blind faith. I follow logic and reason wherever it goes.
Oh, and the concept of not only there is one universe, but multi-million universes. When you think about that, it's just unfathomable. The concept of, I mean, how can you not believe in infinity when you're thinking about multiple universes out there? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, even the size of our known universe is mind-boggling. The size of our known universe is already mind-boggling. To think about an infinitely large universe, for me, it's almost, I mean, like, it's not like a huge step. Like once you realize just how vast our known universe, or like the universe that we've observed is, like, it's, infinity is so much bigger than that, but like the universe is vast. Sean, you have your hand up.
Yes, you can finish your conversation first, and then
I think it's okay to ask whatever or say whatever you want to say.
okay, that's fine. Garrett, I think you are amazing, man. You're such a young man, and I found you are very balanced, very calm when deal with some hot topic, right? We are in the same profession. I'm programmer too. Okay.
Cool.
Actually, I got my first degree in statistics. I'm more interested in computer science. So when I work at a bank, right, I got another degree in computer science. Since then, I work in computer industry. I work at a university anyway. Before, right, you probably already noticed whenever we talk about politics, I got very emotional.
Yep.
Maybe I worry too much. Okay, I come here 35 years ago. Before I never worry about politics. Be honest, I just care about my job. I care about my profession. I know American democracy is great. Everybody going vote. Doesn't matter you are Democrat or Republican. It's always in the right direction, right? But since 2016, I found something not right. Okay, especially 2020 after the January 6th, I found our country is really wrong path. I really got worried. Okay, I don't care about Democrat or Republican. Everybody have to respect election result. Otherwise, that would be chaos. That wouldn't work, right? Just like play game. If you lost, it's all lost. I do better next time. Come back, play again. Play the game. Play better rather than say, I win. Somebody stole my game. That's all right. You lost, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I'm going to make a New Year resolution. Start 2023, right? I'm going to learn from you. Become whenever I encounter a hot topic. Okay, become and a lot of try to argue with people instead of try to be honest, you cannot convince people. Okay, that's what I learned in the party. Maybe just present your fact. So don't expect someone to agree with you. That's no way. You can't convince people. Okay, something even though it's obvious. If somebody has that kind of mindset, right? They say Trump win. No matter how you present, say your vice president, your attorney general, okay, all tell you Trump lost. And then this Arizona and Georgia, both governor and secretary of state is a Republican, right? If there is a fraud, going to come out and after fraud, right? It's some common sense. But you just can't argue with them. This is why it's so frustrating. Okay. But anyway, I'm going to do better. Okay, since I start 2023. Not going to get too emotional. Right.
So Sean, I will say I appreciate your passion. I wish more people were as outraged about what's going on as you are. However, I will also say a little saying for you to keep in mind is that I made up. I like to make up little pithy sayings, which is the person who loses their temper loses the argument. And so passion is good, but if you lose your temper, then you lose the argument because no one's going to listen to you anymore. And
That's
so
true.
just keep that in mind, Sean, like harness that passion to like take your ability to reason and, you know, use it as a temper for your ability to reason and the facts that you want to present. And as far as, you know, not being able to convince people, I listened to 3 books that were about convincing people and related subjects this weekend, or in the past couple of days over the holidays when I was visiting family. I was driving and I listened to book summaries, and those plus a bunch of other, you know, of my own research has helped me to realize that the best way to convince someone is to listen carefully to them and understand their perspective first. You're not going to convince someone if you haven't first listened to them. Listening is actually ironically the best way to convince someone of something. That said, Ellis has her hand up and then Safa.
Yes, I should remind we're going to go into our open discussion now. So about 2.5 to 3 minutes max per person. Garrett, did you also want to open up more? Like we can talk about our topics or topics that people want
I'm
to see.
open, open for whatever people want to talk about.
Or even something that they have on their mind, something that
anything.
this year happened or looking forward to the new year. If you wanted to discuss your goal and maybe we can help each other on that too. It's open discussion tonight, so let's have fun.
Yeah. Safa, am I pronouncing that okay?
Yeah, that's right.
Great.
First of all, thank you so much for walking us through the list of topics. I'm much newer here, but it's fascinating the range of different things that you've covered. I wonder if you've done this in the past or if you're planning to do this in the future, but will you be interested in talking about psychedelics in the US specifically, especially after Oregon legalized it in 2020 and then recently Colorado. And then there has been a recent resurgence in, you know, sort of like churches or like consuming it under legal or sort of like religious freedom in the US. I was wondering what your thoughts are on this or if you were planning to do this in the future.
I think it's a good topic suggestion. Like we really covered drugs wholesale, and my opinion on drugs personally is what I described earlier, which is I think they should all be legal, but they should all, you know, everyone should have to pass a test before they're able to take the drug, saying that they know what's going to happen to them and they know what the health risks are and they know the addiction risks, et cetera, et cetera. Psychedelics are a particularly interesting one to discuss though, because you know, microdosing psychedelics has been shown to be more effective at curing depression than SSRIs, which are the commonly, you know, prescribed medications for depression. So we're talking about like, you know, microdoses, not, you know, acid tripping or anything like that, but like, you know, so it would be an interesting one to talk about. I'm not like, I know a little bit obviously, but I'm not super knowledgeable on it. But if it's something you're really knowledgeable about and you wanted to present, reach out to me and I'm happy to have you do it. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Well, I was just going to say,
yeah.
I'll ask Garrett Jackson about that because in the community, they do a lot of, they're utilizing a lot of drugs with the ayahuasca and different things. So I'll look around for someone or Safa can recommend.
What was, I'm sorry, Garrett, I just missed that word. What was it that you just mentioned that works better than SSRI? What was it?
Microdosing psychedelics works better than better than SSRIs or the commonly used like antidepressant drugs. So yeah, that there's been a lot of research. And the thing that's interesting about this, and this is part of why I think that all drugs should be legal, is because like we would never, like if it wasn't allowed for people to study those drugs, then we would never know that, right? And so luckily people were able to study microdosing, and so we learned that it's actually super effective at curing depression. Well, what other medicinal qualities are there to other currently illegal drugs that we don't know about? And in what doses? Like, if we don't legalize them, how do we even study them to know how they could be helpful and therapeutic to people in a positive light? Like, why look at all drugs as a negative? And I think the amount of stigma that comes along with doing drugs, and the amount of like money that gets put into organized crime for trafficking drugs, causes way more harm than the drugs themselves would cause to people who are going to do them anyway, whether you make them legal or not. And then you look at the amount of incarceration based on drugs. And we looked at all of this in our event on drugs, by the way. We looked at the cost of incarceration. If you look at the US, we have the highest incarceration rate of any country in the world. And it's because of drugs. Like, the majority of people, I think it's about 50% of people in prisons and jails are because of drugs. And it's like, well, who are they harming but themselves? If they had assaulted someone, then they're in for assault, not for drugs. But like, who are they harming but themselves? And shouldn't people be allowed to do that to some degree if it's something they're aware of what they're doing? So that's it, Susie. Good to see you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm so appreciate this, Garrett. And I wanted to put it in, like, in America, we are so quick in taking drugs, instead of alternative, like a lot of mental health issue when we help by therapy, by talk therapy, rather than taking drug. Because I have some acquaintances, some friends that I met through the course of the few years, that not working. They are taking drug for bipolar, for depression. But the minute you don't take it anymore, you had thought of like suicide, you like double the depression that you were feeling before, and that there are cases. So I don't know, we should look into the issue that causing depression rather than, right?
It's worse than just that, Susie. I coach a number of people with depression, and it turns out that actually some antidepressants themselves, with if they don't agree with a person, can bring suicidal thoughts.
My own experience.
Just by taking the antidepressant can create suicidal thoughts, like increased amounts of suicidal thoughts, more than them just being depressed. And so actually some antidepressants cause suicidal thoughts in some respects. And so you have to and they're and so it's a complicated subject. And I also learned a statistic recently that I think the statistic was 20% of people in a given year have a mental health issue, and over a lifetime, 50% of people have a mental health issue at least sometime in their lifetime. And it's like, wow, that's eye-opening. And yet there's so much social stigma with mental health issues. But this is a super common thing. Like, it's actually as common to have a mental health issue as to not have one.
Oh yeah, Freethinker Institute membership.
I know. I have experience. I have a friend, right? And she pregnant, and she have a C-section delivery like I did. So she would offer Percocet. I was offered Percocet as well, but I did not take them because I was breastfeeding my kid. So she took them, and it turned out that she likes it, and then after the prescription ran out, like she need to substitute it with a different drug, right? So that's how addiction came about. That I learned from one of the the person that I met. Somehow, I mean, Percocet, they know that there is opioid in there, right? They know that it's addicted, right? Now they do that, but before that they did not know, or they still do. And then when you hooked on that, then how can you get out? Your addiction is very powerful.
Yeah, addiction is very powerful. And that's why, I think that people should have to take a test to say, this is the chance of becoming addicted to this drug, right? Like crack cocaine is very addictive. And
Right.
so you should need to pass a test that says, I know this is an extremely addictive drug, and I know these are the health implications that it's going to have on my body. And I'm still choosing to do it, even though, maybe even give the person alternatives of other drugs that'll give them a similar feeling, but be less addictive. Because, I think using reason to steer people away from more addictive drugs and more harmful drugs would be a better approach than just making them illegal.
Oh, right. Yes. Like I was diagnosed with high-end anxiety, right? I should have let some other people talk, but they give me drug, but I said, no, I'm not agreeable to that, so you can decline the drug though. You can say, oh, you're not taking them. Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm taking too much time. Thank you.
Susie, thank you for that idea, because we haven't done a mental illness night. I'm going to add it to the list.
Yeah, we
That's
should.
Oh, that's a good
That's
idea.
Good point.
Yeah.
It's a broad
yeah.
subject to even cover, but I think it's a good one. It's a good one to talk about, and we can cover a wide range of mental illness.
And when you think about, I have my hand up, and when you think about how each person, depression manifests in a different way, how each person has a different chemical makeup, and then how many different drugs out there to address so-called depression. When you think about it, it's just immensely complex. So, and my thoughts are like, in terms of therapy, what about all the plants in rainforests, for example, that we could research and find out what plants could help with, mental therapy. So I feel like at some point, to a certain degree, we're at the tip of iceberg of discovery and research and development in this area. The therapy as well as studying the different. It's so complex. I
totally agree. I totally agree, Jenny. And I will say, when I was in the Amazon, I got to try a thing that was like used for dentistry amongst the Amazonian community. And it was very sweet, and it would numb your mouth. It was very interesting. But then if you think about that's just one example of an interesting, medicinal quality of an Amazon, and so imagine all of the other possible things that could be studied, and the amount that we're making go extinct while we're destroying the Amazon rainforest.
Exactly.
So,
that is just so upsetting, that the rainforest is being destroyed. Yeah. Oh, well, we could go on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Rose.
Hi, thank you so much. I just wanted to add and argue with you, Garrett, because you said everything should be, the illegal drugs should be legal. There has been a very extensive research in recent years, and that shows that each person actually has, as far as addiction, each person is different. So you might take some drugs and you don't get addicted, but another person might take the same drug and get addicted. And that all goes, as the doctors think, a specific part of the brain. So if your specific part of your brain is sensitive, you're going to be most likely get addicted to any drug. That's why I don't think it's a good idea to have everything illegal for everyone, because the effect is very different for each person.
Yeah, I agree with you that the effect is different. And like some people have more addictive personalities, more addictive potentially genes, but I would also argue that it has to do with whether or not they're trying to escape reality. And I would argue one of the biggest challenges, my guess, this is a total guess, I'm not an expert in this field, my guess is that one of the big reasons that people get addicted to drugs is they're trying to escape reality. Actually, it's not just a guess, because I have talked with people who have done drugs, and gone sober after doing drugs. And that was, a big reason that they got addicted to drugs, was to escape reality. And so, I have anecdotal support for that. But again, I'm not saying that I think everybody should do drugs. I've never done drugs, even though I lived in the pot capital of the world for like almost a decade. I've never done drugs myself, and I don't plan to. But what I'm more saying is that I would rather see a system of education so that people know how likely they are to be addicted. And I would rather see scientific research going into how likely someone would be to be addicted, even if it came down to personalized medicine. To your point, I think that was Rose. And if we got to the point where someone could say, look, if I take X drug, I will be 70% likely to be addicted to it, and the person still opts in, well, they would be able to opt into buying those drugs illegally if they wanted to anyway. At least by having them be well informed, we've made them well informed, so they're making a conscious decision, knowing the health implications, knowing the risks of addiction, knowing all these things that they wouldn't know if they just went out and did the drug illegally and bought it illegally, which is what they're doing today. They're totally ignorant about these drugs. And people will go to a rave and take ecstasy. They don't know what the health implications of ecstasy. They just see someone give them a pill and take it, and they start dancing. And so I think we're in a much worse spot now than we would be in the scenario that I'm putting forth. And again, like, my proposal for legalizing drugs is one that I haven't seen before, which is that it should be, people should have to pass a test showing that they're knowledgeable in the drug. That said, I
Yeah,
don't mind you disagreeing with me. So
yeah, no, I understand. But unfortunately, at this moment, I don't think we have enough research to be able to categorize everything, like each separate drugs and each person. So there is no way of knowing. Even the medication drugs, like legal drugs that they give, like psychiatric give for different mental illness, it's all try and error.
yeah.
If somebody has depression, you go to the doctor, it's just try and error. Unfortunately, there is not enough research to specify, okay, which drug, which medication is good for this person and works for this person best, and which one is not. And I think that's the problem right now, because there is not much research and information about all of these things.
Yeah, you're right, Rose. And I would argue one of the reasons there's not much research is because all these drugs are illegal. There actually is a lot of research into mental health. I actually held a meetup out here in New Jersey, and a woman told me that her daughter took a test that basically, it was a genetic test, and it said which like mental health drugs would be more conducive to her genes versus less conducive to her genes. And she had already cycled through a whole lot of drugs. And so she basically said that the test was extremely accurate about which drugs would be good for her daughter and which drugs would be bad for her daughter. And so I found that really interesting. Wouldn't it be interesting if we could get to that level of, what are now illegal drugs? We do that with pharmacy, like pharmacy drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, but why not with what are currently illegal drugs, and, see which drugs are better or worse for people, or are more likely to cause addiction or not. Sean, go ahead. Oh, you just put your hand up.
Yeah, no, I'm talking, yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
I come to Southbury 1994, almost 29 years ago. Southbury is a small college town. I would say maybe 40,000 people. At that time, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 pharmacy. Okay. How many pharmacies we have today? I would say I just counted. Okay, I think at least 25. Okay, at least. We never had a CVS, Walgreens, or Rite Aid, those national chains. Now the all is here. So I think American is an overdrug. Okay, take too many medications. I think that, like, I I do not want to demean people who have like depressed or mental problems, but I do feel sometimes mental disease, right? And also is the way you're thinking or your attitude. For example, sometimes I feel I have a learning disability, or I had ADHD, but I know this is not right because I got to graduate degree, right? I got OAs. How come I have a learning disability? The reason for that, something triggered me think that way because I come here 35 years ago, I still have very strong accent. Okay, that's very frustrating for me. And also hindered my, I would say a lot of things I could do better because my accent, okay, prevented me to go a little bit higher, okay? Because something triggers that. So I think I would say anybody have either feel depressed or whatever, quite natural way instead of use those medications. Okay, maybe I'm wrong. I just express my opinion. Okay. For example, I found something is good. For example, if we got upset, I can find one way to do it is go to monkeytype.com. You just type, okay, just type through typing. I can give you the link. You just follow the typing. That's great thing to manage your emotion and calm you down, okay? And also maybe doing meditation, take a walk. Anyway, I say this by no means to demean people who have a mental problem, okay? It's just my 2 cents. I just feel America is heavily drugged. We have so many psychotic drugs. Before like a Prozac, now you have so many, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 different drugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Sorry, I got a visit from my daughter that I hope that Ginny caught it, but she may not have. Shaunak, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Once again, Gareth, thanks for the year of interesting topics. I just wanted to, you talked about that microdosing studies. Can you point out the study that you were talking about? I do know there have been, citizen science microdosing studies done.
No, they're peer-reviewed studies.
Is this a peer-reviewed study
Yeah.
you're talking about? I know that the psychedelic research that has been done, the most famous ones have been on the cancer, critical stage cancer patients, but the studies have been for high dose psychedelics, psilocybin tests. I haven't read any of those micro dose ones. I've read, citizen science or anecdotal science of people talking about it. For many people, it seems that it has worked. It's also become somewhat of a fad, but for many people, it hasn't worked either. They say that once a year, do a high dose psychedelic session is way better for them than, wasting microdoses. But, it's different for different people. If you have that study, can you point that out, the microdose study?
Yeah, I'm gonna post it for you. It was a John Hopkins study, and I'm gonna post a link to an article that will link to the study. So I just put it in. Oh, whoop. Okay. Yeah, I just posted it.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yep. Safa.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to follow up again with I think someone asked something about studies related to psychedelics on their treatment of mental health issues. And off the top of my head, I remember 3 different types of research or types of results based on a research. One of them being the ketamine infusion clinics. Now they're very popular around the US, and the ketamine clinics now are mostly for treating treatment-resistant depression. And so usually they get somebody to do that in addition to CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapy. And it shows that like that sort of like set of treatment works, especially on those that have tried different methods of treating their depression and still resistant, but the ketamine clinics sort of like works for them. And then the other one was, there was another study, I think, what is it, the Journal of Psychological Medicine or something. They did it on ayahuasca. So they had two groups of people. One was given placebo, and then the other was given ayahuasca. And then they showed like how the group that was on ayahuasca sort of like showed much better improvement in terms of like their symptoms of mental illness and depression compared to the placebo group as well. And then I think that the interesting one was that recently, I think a couple of months ago, there was an article by The Economist, and they were talking about how like pharmaceutical companies are actually researching how to break down the molecules from like the plants like psilocybin or ayahuasca or like other psychedelics and turn them into drugs that could be prescribed to people. And like they showed different images of like how your brain's neurons are rewired when you're under psychedelics. So like it literally changes their wiring of the brain's neurons. And so a couple of pharmaceutical companies are like underway of creating pills that can induce some like similar effects. And I think, but that was more on like the microdosing aspect, like they wouldn't induce a full psychedelic experience. And they said that they're planning to remove the visual effects from it and like just keep the therapeutical effects of the psychedelic medicine and like turn them into pills that they can then prescribe to people for like advanced level of mental health issues and depression. So just wanted to share like these three anecdotes.
Thanks for sharing. Ellis, is that you with your hand up? Yeah.
Yes, that's me. I just thought to mention for Sunak, he's always here and you always have a lot of very intelligent things to say. So you're welcome to message me if you have any ideas for topics.
It's Shaunak, by the way, Ellis.
Shaunak. And Sean, I need a lot of good ideas for politics, and I know you're good at that. So you're welcome to message me as well. And Safa, I wasn't sure, but it seems like you have a background in this medicine stuff, or you just read the studies?
I don't have a background, no. I just like, I know a lot of people and like I read the studies and I follow like the industry itself. But I have experiences personally, but you know, like that's beside the point, I think.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Pearl.
Okay, I'm on mute. I just see this topic as being a bit dangerous, if not naive, to sort of try to handle in a forum like this without having rooted in any sort of scientific, if I may use the term, or rather than anecdotal instances that come up. As far as the I think there's a difference between addictions and mental illness. They cross over, but they are different. And I think like asking, why does somebody take methamphetamine, heroin, crack cocaine, ketamine, or ecstasy drugs ad infinitum, as psilocybin, it is basically, it makes you feel good. When they start off, you feel good, you feel great, you feel wonderful, you can take on the world. It's only when you've taken it for 5, 10, 15 years and you're at the end of your life that it becomes a problem. So I think that's not a topic that I think should be discussed in a group like this.
Thanks for sharing, Carl. We discuss pretty much everything openly that people have an interest in. we did ground the conversation during the year in research and data, but tonight we're kind of ad hocing it based on whatever people are interested in talking about. So, Renee, you have your hand up.
You know, I really have to agree with this gentleman about what we are discussing. I'm new to this group. First time I've been here. I'm very sensitive when there's a topic referring to medication, mentally ill. You know, we were talking microdosing, I don't know what that is, and psychedelic drugs. And I don't know if there's any people that are professionals in this meeting here, or is this all just opinionated? Or because I happen to suffer from the severity bipolar, so some of this I'm really sensitive to because there is so much ignorance in society and stigma. So like I said, I'm really sensitive to a lot of this. I could write a book because I actually live this nightmare. So I'm just commenting to this gentleman that I'm agreeing that this topic should be maybe, should I say monitored, or I can't think of it a word, but I mean, if that's what people are into in this group.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
have choices too.
we're just kind of ad hocing whatever we talk about tonight. It's kind of free form conversation. People have gravitated towards the drugs topic, but that wasn't really the planned topic for the evening. So there's not a, we're just kind of sharing opinions with each other right now. I did post an article that refers to studies on microdosing psilocybin. I can't pronounce it. Psilocybin, thank you. Microdosing just means taking very small doses so you don't get like the drug induced the full effect of taking a full dose of the drug.
What drug are you referring to? What drugs are we
Psilocybin is the one
talking?
that we were talking about. People were, studies have been done saying that microdosing psilocybin helps cure people of depression pretty consistently, more effectively, quite frankly, than most antidepressants that are prescribed today.
What is the name of this drug? Because is it something new on the market? Because
No, it's
with-
like an ancient, I think it's like it's a mushroom, if I remember
oh
right.
no, thank you. That's why I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah,
And that is
I
those
mean,
kind of drugs.
Safa, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm terrible with that name. I think it's a mushroom, right?
Yeah, psilocybin is a mushroom, and then that's just one of the things. The other ones, the ayahuasca comes from a different plant. And then there are other forms of, there are sources for different types of psychedelics. There are some of them are manufactured by pharmaceuticals, but then the sort of like plant-based ones are psilocybin, which is from mushrooms, and ayahuasca.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not suggesting, I don't think anyone is suggesting that people go out and do drugs based on our conversation here. We're just exchanging information and, things to research and to look up, like in your spare time if you want to. That's more what this is about, is sharing knowledge and wisdom. So Mike, that said, and we don't have to stick with the drug subject. It's not one of my favorite, to be honest, but Mike, go ahead.
Well, I would second the motion of these people who have said it's important to be cautious. Even professionals, even doctors and researchers who can either make their own drugs or can write prescriptions end up with their lives being ruined by drugs. These school shooters that we occasionally hear about. In most cases, I think in every case of the last 3 years that got publicized, the person had been on prescribed psychoactive drugs. So this is a subject that that probably ought to be preceded with, "Don't try this at home." It needs to be.
And let me share what Darlene said in the chat, which is if you want a new topic, bring up a new, more exciting topic to talk about, and let's talk about that. I'm all for whatever people are interested in chatting about. And we've had 3 or 4 people say, they don't like the drug subject, but let's bring up another subject that people are interested in that we can have a good conversation about. That said,
I can say something about the subject you left on religion.
yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Is the description of religion is one God or one constellation of gods that are viewed through different windows, like Plato's cave, and you see what you need to see out of all of these, out of all religions.
Yeah.
One way that it was told to me is there is likely some sort of truth. The universe is more complicated, not only that we imagine, but that we can possibly imagine. And so when we see the view, if there was many of these religions are revealed religion through prophecy, and just like you would tell if you wanted to come up with an explanation for the complexities of the universe to your child, and to some extent we're all children at some level. You might not be able, you won't start with quantum electrodynamics and microbiology. It would be to say that this supreme being put together this world in 7 days. The Genesis story is the kind of thing that one would tell somebody who is not really versed in what we know, but what we know is inadequate too. So everything what we see, either from our own mind or from the literature, is put together in that fashion. So it is a good what we see from religion is a good metaphor for how the world works, but it may have no bearing on truth. And that's
super insightful, Mike, and I agree with you 100%. I would argue that almost all religions are attempts to understand God, and all religions are about how we should behave, and how we should treat each other. And I would argue they're all sort of striving for increasing happiness and decreasing harm in society in general. So I think that by learning from all religions, we can sort of see the world from a more diverse perspective, and we can learn wisdom from all sources, rather than limiting ourselves to one or none. That said, Shaunak, go ahead.
Before we change topics, I just wanted to, regarding, want to go back again to the drug talk once again. Just want to point, I agree with, those who have shown concerns regarding, taking anything of that, using any drugs without doing any research. Nobody is saying that. But I do want to point one thing out. A lot of the fear surrounding psychedelics, comes from the fact that it has been essentially classed the same or even worse than crack cocaine, meth, or all the other opiate-based drugs. And a lot of the fear that comes for drugs, for the ones that do have the potential to better human life, psychedelics are, there is potential there. And what's happening is research has been stopped on those for the last 40 years. It's only in recent years that the resurgence is happening and the studies are coming out. And if you're really, really interested, I would really say look into these research on psychedelics, because I truly believe they are, a potential pathway to better mental health. And they have been, for many, many years in many shamanic traditions or many cultures across the world. So I just wanted to point that out. A lot of the fear stems because, these drugs have been classified the same as meth or the opiate-based drugs, which I do believe are the worst kinds of drugs. So the research that we just brought up, or I was asking for as well, they give you a much more fact-based opinion that these do have a potential to, help mankind into the future. So I just wanted to point that out. If you're really interested, there are a lot of documentaries out there that have been made in recent years that talk about these as well. I just wanted to point that out.
Thanks, Shauna. Carl, go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to talk about something different, but I just want to say the logic of some of the arguments here does not really carry a lot of weight. But I would like to suggest one topic that may be a more, what would you say, incendiary or popular topic is Meghan and Harry, and it's public relations, toxic relations, culture, colonialism, and Pretty Little Liars. And I think, as jejune and puerile, if I may use those terms, such efforts on this part, it's certainly an example of how to use public relations, how to try to destroy a family relationship, and how to take toxic culture to the extremes to make money and to see a relationship between families of that we aren't really even, had no idea about understanding, probably no more so than we do about the drug culture or anything of that sort, but at least it might be a bit more light. That's my contribution.
I didn't understand what you were trying to propose, Carl.
What I'm proposing is that, looking at Meghan and Harry and how they're using public relations, how they're attacking their family for their own fortune, how they're attacking the British colonialist and the British royal culture, and the fact that they are doing so by essentially lying their way through the media. Or at least some would have that opinion that they're lying through the media. There's something we can learn about how to use the media and how to abuse the media and how to try to monetize your own ill will.
That sounds interesting, Carl. Definitely, if you'd like to co-host something like that, I know a lot of people want to talk about this as well. Anyways, it's already almost 8:30, so maybe we can shift more into looking forward to the upcoming year, any goals people are having or any themes they felt this year or any incidents or memories they have from this year. And we can continue open discussion as well. Oh, I should mention as well, if anyone hasn't spoken yet, now's the time to raise your hands.
I mean, I don't have much to offer on the royal family, Carl. I don't follow them at all, so. But as far as like the way that media can be used, that's a big subject, and might be worth worth talking about. I think that would be an interesting one to hear people's opinions on. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think media is a media is a very heated subject in this day and age, because half of the country says the other half's listening to fake news, and then that half says the first half is listening to fake news. And so that's part of why I tell everybody you should listen to right-wing news, left-wing news, and centrist news, and then fact check everything that sounds suspicious, because I would argue that's the only way to come to a really clear vision of reality, which is, similar to what Mike was saying about religion, is like seeing, understanding different religions' perspectives gives you a wider view on, religion as a whole. I think seeing the world from different perspectives is what part of why I started the Freethinker Institute, is to help us all see from different perspectives and learn different perspectives from each other, because I think that gives us all a better understanding of the world and helps us acquire knowledge and wisdom more effectively.
Oh, I also wanted to say, I think Darlene is here. I'm not sure. I think I saw that she does a meetup as well. So Darlene, I'd love to do something with you if you'd like to collaborate. You're welcome to message me because I know you're an excellent host.
Yeah. Like I hope, I guess for a topic for this group, I think, specifically talking about attachment styles and attachment theory would be a really good subject to have a day focused on that. And that topic is so intense, and a lot of people are all over the internet are giving partially incorrect and partially correct information, and so it really deserves a whole night.
Yeah, I do think that would be a good one, Darlene. And I actually, one of the books that I was listening to over the holidays was about attachment theory. And they actually made the argument, which is different than what you and I talked about, Darlene. When we talked about it, I think you told me that attachment style can't change in adult life. But then this book was basically saying it actually can change depending on the types of relationships you have in adult life. And so it seems like there may just not be a consistent, perspective, but I think it would be interesting to do an event on attachment style to sort of see what we can glean from that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what people can do is they can practice and practice and practice different sentences both in their head and create a new mindset, but they still are going to, when things first happen, because with our theory, it's when a problem arises, and when they feel their original one that their brain developed when they're a child comes up, they can, when they feel it, they have to be aware of it, and then they can switch it over. And that's what people mean by change. But the initial one, they have to become aware of what their own is. Mm-hmm. And then they can be in a practice of when it comes up to switch over, like within a matter of seconds. That's what those people mean by change it. But they can't change the initial one, but they can become aware of it, and literally in just a few seconds go into a more positive, productive mindset. I'm done.
Thanks, Darlene. And Renee is saying no news is good news in the chat, and I like the app is called Good News Network, if I remember right, Renee, about there's a company that only shares good news, and I really like that company. I don't watch any news because like unless there's like a topic that's interesting that I need to learn about and become well informed of, and then I go all in on left wing, right wing, and centrist news. But short of that, I don't watch the news on a regular basis because it's also negative, that it just brings too much negativity into my life, and all of it is out of my control. And as a practicing Stoic, I try to focus on what's in my control, which is the people that I can influence in my life, and not, whether or not there's a war in the Ukraine, which, don't get me wrong, I care about that, but I'm not going to be able to do anything to influence it. So it doesn't worry to agonize over the fact that it's going on every day. So I focus on what I can control and trying to make my life and the lives of people I can influence better, which I would argue is more practical than, worrying about things that are completely out of our control. We also had a night on Stoicism. I forgot about that. Greg Lopez presented on Stoicism, which is one of the philosophical practices I've learned the most from. Stoicism, there's different types of schools of thought in Stoicism, but some of them have a lot of wisdom to offer. And that's what's called Stoic practical philosophy, which is where you separate what's in your control from what's out of your control, and you don't worry about what's out of your control. You focus your happiness only on things that are in your control, and then you can control your happiness, which I'd argue is pretty good advice. Yeah, and Renee, I agree with trying to keep things positive. Although there is also what's called toxic positivity, which I like to address. Toxic positivity is when you completely ignore the negatives, even if they are coming into your life. And then you're also ignoring the root causes of negative things that are entering your life. And that's not healthy either, right? It's good to acknowledge if something negative comes into our lives, that negative thing came in, and understand why it happened, and be able to address that. But focus on the positive and try to cultivate positive emotions, but not ignore the negatives. But it's also, let's not seek out negatives. There's enough negativity without seeking them out. That said, you have your hand up, Renee, go ahead.
Yeah, Garrett, I've just recently heard something, the way you're phrasing that. You can't ignore toxicity, whether it's in people or the world. However, I've gotten through life now, I'm thinking I have no control over anyone but myself, and I have no control, sadly, over what's going on in the world. But what I do have control over is the way I perceive things. Take what I want and leave the rest. Positivity, I don't always like that word positive. For example, like health issues. It's realistically speaking, I have something that positivity, the point I'm trying to make, positivity does not cure anything that we have that could be terminal. Be positive. People use the word be positive, but I'll go along with the family. I hate this line, but I'm going to use it anyways, because when people use it, I'm so damn triggered. It is what it is. It was what it was, and it may be what it may be.
Yeah, I mean, I think accepting things for what they are is good. As far as not having control over anyone, while you can't control what other people do and say, we are social animals, and we can influence other people. And I would argue that when we try to positively influence other people, that's a good thing. We just want to not, try to be attached to them agreeing with us. And that's where, like, offering advice is great, but being attached to someone agreeing with us and following our advice is not great, right? Then we're we're setting ourselves up for failure, because it's up to that person whether or not they want to follow our advice, or if they even want to listen to it in the first place.
If they didn't ask it, don't give it.
What's that?
If they don't ask for advice, if I don't ask for advice and somebody's telling me, I don't know, well, you should do this and you should do that, then just forget it.
Yeah, that's a common belief, is for people to say, if I didn't ask for advice, don't give it to me. But I would argue, like, if we see an opportunity to help someone, I think offering advice should be seen as a good thing if it's someone that we have a good relationship with, maybe not to a random stranger. I'm not gonna, walk up to a person jogging on a concrete sidewalk and say, hey, you're gonna ruin your knees doing that, because that's what I did, right? I have had that thought pass through my mind that I want to warn this person, you're gonna break your knees like I did running on concrete, but that's not a good idea. But then if I take someone that I'm close to and I see them doing something that I don't think is serving serving to help them in their life, then I think I should feel free to offer some advice, even unsolicited. And I prefer people do that with me. Like if I can do something better when I'm hosting events, and people offered advice earlier, let's switch off the topic of drugs. Well, I appreciated that advice and we've switched off the topic now. And, I think, where we can help steer each other in a direction that's more mutually beneficial, that's a good thing. And one of the 5 intentions of the Freethinker Institute is to transparently share our beliefs, to the extent we trust someone, and to listen to other people with an open mind. And I would argue we should always listen to advice with an open mind. We don't have to agree with it all, but to listen to it with an open mind is a good idea, even if it's unsolicited advice.
Basically, like I said, take what you want, leave the rest.
Exactly. And that's what I do with religion. That's what
Ideas,
I do with philosophy. That's what I do with everything. Like whatever resonates is going to stick. And wherever, like I said earlier, like I follow reason wherever it leads me. And, I don't care where the source of wisdom or knowledge is, or what source gives me that wisdom or knowledge. As long as it's wisdom or knowledge, like I gravitate towards that.
Very good. Thank you.
And yeah, Darlene, I think it's not just okay to listen to a different point of view. It's super important because we never learn anything new unless we do listen to different points of view. And, if you think about it that way, like if we only listen to points of view that agree with us, which is what confirmation bias is, then we're never going to learn anything the rest of our lives. We're only going to believe everything we think now is true for the rest of our lives. Well, that's not a good place to be either, right? We want to continue to learn throughout our lives and continue to grow and develop. And to do that, we have to have humility and to, listen with an open mind to new ideas that might be closer to truth than our current beliefs, or help expand our sphere of knowledge and wisdom. Yeah, and I don't know who iPhone is, but they pointed out that people are usually afraid to get advice because they're afraid their ground is being shaken. And it's true. Like there's a certain amount of scariness to admitting you're wrong. But I like to say, if you admit you're wrong with good judgment, you're immediately right again. You're more right than you were before when you were actually wrong. So, it's actually a good thing to admit you're wrong, because if you do it with good judgment, you're more right than you were before. And that, I hope, like keeping that saying in mind will take the sting out of admitting we're wrong, because it just means that we're more right by admitting we're wrong. And so, but I do think that people, like, there is a lot of reluctancy for people to admit they're wrong. It's almost like we think our credibility is going to be undermined if we admit we're wrong, whereas the truth is most of us actually believe, like we'll listen more to with an open mind to someone who has admitted they're wrong and shown vulnerability in being able to admit they're wrong, than those people who buckle down and say, I'm right, even when it's very clear that they're wrong, right? How many of those people do you trust if you see very clearly that they're wrong and they keep insisting they're right? I don't trust those people, right? Like I'm going to listen to them with an open mind, but I'm not going to trust them as much as someone who admits they're wrong when it's clear that they're wrong.
I have something to add.
Yes, please.
So you mentioned, like, I prefer to trust to people who admits they were wrong and now they are taking action for that. So there is also kind of people I see a lot, which is they say, okay, now we are doing this, and what, like there's a behavior, like they are not admitting it, like there are also type of personalities that prefers not to admit they were wrong, but prefers to say, I was right also at that time in that condition, for that condition. You know, like I was always right at that time, and it didn't work. Like it is not admitting being wrong. So these are the things that I see a lot in the, like with people. Like, did I I mean, I don't know if I express myself clearly, but what I am trying to say is, I also believe like for self-development, you should say, okay, I was wrong. Now I learned and I am taking this kind of action.
Right. I think what you're saying, if I understand Nakati right, is that I may have made a mistake, but I made the best decision I could at the time. And so I'm, you know, like, sure, it was wrong, but it was the best decision I could make at the time, given what I knew. Is that what you're saying? Like, given the context?
So the weird part is, like, this kind of person, like, people never say I am wrong. This is the problem. Like, I believe, like, because if there is something I made a mistake, I say, okay, I made a mistake. Now I am trying to fix it. I'm changing it. Okay, but and I'm learning. I'm iterating on my process. Okay, so I was wrong. But what I'm trying to say is, these people always say I was also right at that time. Now I am also again doing this, but I am again right. So, but they are changing their behavior based on the learning, but they don't want to admit that they were wrong.
Right.
So I think, like, since I experienced this couple of times, like, I am thinking, is that just like, are they developing themselves? Are they really changing themselves? Or it is just a trick for them? Like, you know, like it is just you know, they are tricking themselves.
I think what you're saying is that some people will alter their behavior and show that they learned that they made a mistake in the past, but they will never admit that they were wrong. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, maybe. So do you think that is that learning? Is that development?
I think it is development and it's learning, but it shows that they lack the humility, and that they're kind of feeding their egotism of, I will never admit that I'm wrong, or maybe they come from a background where admitting you're wrong was seen as a weakness, and they don't feel like they can be that vulnerable with people, and maybe they just don't trust us, you know, the person they're talking to, enough to be vulnerable with us. Maybe we haven't given them a sense that we won't judge them for admitting they were wrong, and you know, and maybe, you know, so I think all of those are reasons that someone may not admit they're wrong, and it's complicated and nuanced.
Yeah. So I think I understand you, but what I am thinking is, yes, like now they are taking the correct action and they are trying to fix it, but I am still not sure if it is a development if you don't admit that it was a mistake, because now you are just trying to patch the solution, you know, like fix that solution at that moment. Like you are just trying to find a solution at this moment because it previously didn't work. So, I mean, I am not sure if not admitting that we were wrong is developing us, you know, like, because I think we are not going to the root cause. We are not going to the root problem.
Right. Well, if the person is changing their behavior, right, then they are fixing the root cause of the problem. They're just not acknowledging that they made a mistake in the first place. And that's where I was offering some alternative reasons why they may not admit that they made a mistake in the first place. You know, it's like if your significant other always finishes the ketchup and doesn't buy a new one, well, if they, you know, if you say, hey, that really annoys me, and they start buying a new ketchup when they finish the ketchup, then great, they solved the problem. But if they never admit they were wrong to not have done that in the first place, that doesn't mean they didn't learn the lesson, because they changed their behavior and they did learn the lesson, you know. So I'd argue you can learn the lesson without admitting you were wrong and show a behavior change. That's certainly better, in my opinion, than not showing a behavior change and continuing to make the same bad mistakes over and over again and not learning from them either. So, you know, I would call it a middle ground, you know, not quite as good as acknowledging the mistake, but not quite as bad as not learning from it.
Okay, so okay, yeah, I mean, so I think I still not 100% sure about this, but I got your point.
Yeah. And Shaunak,
yeah.
Shaunak, you go ahead, and then I want to mention something, respond to something Carl said in the chat. So go ahead, Shaunak.
Yeah, just was wondering if we could do a topic on discipline over the next year. I think that would be a good topic because, you know, achieving goals and everything is okay, but without discipline, that's not going to happen. And a serious discussion on discipline might be in order, and maybe some advice from you as well, Garrett.
Yeah, I think discipline would be a great subject. I have a lot that I can talk about on that, so I won't get into it now because it's the end of the evening. But
just a suggestion, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion. It's, you know, sort of related to how to achieve your life goals in a state of positive flow, which is another event that we did this year that I guess I didn't. I think there were some issues in my documentation where we missed some of the events that we talked about because that and Stoicism were both missing. But Carl made a comment in the chat about that it's not necessary to prove that someone is wrong. That's a psychological need to show superiority. And I agree with you, Carl. I think pinning someone down and forcing them to admit they're wrong may not be healthy, but I think being able to proactively admit we're wrong from our own perspective without someone forcing us to do it shows a sense of humility and desire to grow and learn and develop and admit mistakes, and shows a level of willingness to be vulnerable that I think should be seen in a positive light rather than seen as a weakness. So I agree with you, though. I don't think it's like, you know, and I think a lot of people approach a debate as I'm right and you're wrong, and then they go about trying to slam, you know, the other person with facts and data to prove themselves right and the other person wrong. And I think that's absolutely the wrong way to approach a debate. And that's why I said the best way to convince someone is to listen to them, because it's better to understand why does someone else believe what they believe, how did they come to the conclusions they came to, and really try to empathize with them and see from their perspective. And maybe you'll learn from them. And if not, maybe you'll see a flaw in their reasoning, and they're going to be more receptive to a flaw in their own reasoning than they are by beating them over the head with a bunch of facts and trying to prove them wrong. So we're rounding out about 10 to 9. Any other anything people want to talk about as far as like goals for 2023 that they have that we didn't cover in the early social?
Well, everyone's quiet today. We have still more time if anyone wants to say anything. This is our last Tuesday of the year.
Yeah, Susie.
Garrett, yeah, I have when I learned about bribery is acceptable in this country, oh my goodness, it put everything into place, you know, how messed up we are and how, you know, how crazy thing has been, right? But is it still going on like that? Is it acceptable for everyone? Does everyone know about that? And you know, we keep carrying on our life like under, like
yeah,
people.
and interesting. That's a, you know, a question about the media. Like, interestingly, the media doesn't talk about that on a regular basis, and and mostly probably because the media is owned by the people who have enough money to bribe, right? Like, and so the media, right wing, left wing, centrist, no media really is regularly talking about how outrageous it is that bribery is legal in the U.S. and that it's a thing, and that our hold on democracy is slowly being bought away. And unfortunately, like the fact that money buys power has been true even before Citizens United, but it's only more true now because more and more money is going into politics since Citizens United, since the floodgates got opened. So it's definitely a difficult situation.
Yes, I noticed that during COVID time and we were doing the elections, for 2020 or some, whatever, for other election, and a lot of money, donation, contribution, they never stop coming in, asking for money. And there seemed to be like a lot of money. The more money, the more change you can get into office. It's just unbelievable. I mean, will it stop? Can someone stop that? Or because I would never know anything about that until enlightening by going here to the Freethinker Institute. I so appreciate.
Great.
That.
Well, we appreciate you too, Susie.
Yeah. Thank you. We will be able to talk about that, like another topic next year.
So I don't know if we'll talk about that specifically. We probably will, because like it's it's something that bears repeating. I don't even know if we have that one on video or not. But if we don't, we will definitely revisit it because that's an important topic. So, and if we do have it on video, we'll try to get it up on YouTube when we can.
Yeah, well, President Biden was talking about perfect union, I mean, our like forefather talk about perfect union. How can you bring everybody together, if we are letting money like divided all of the states like that?
Well, it's not just money, it's political parties divide us too. And, I think, the whole idea that, the US is as divided as we've been since the Civil War is pretty scary. The amount of political animosity that I see from left to right and right to left, friendships, longtime friendships are being destroyed from politics. And really, when it comes down to it, we all have way more in common with each other than we have separating us. And it's just that the powers that be are trying to divide us because we're more easily conquered if we're divided. And I would argue we should all be uniting. And that's one of my many goals of the Freethinker Institute, is to unite people across common values, which are the 5 intentions. Which, if I can just mention them really quickly, it's to be the best version of ourselves, seek truth, and be fair is the first intention. Number 2 is to be transparent about who we are and what we believe to the extent we trust someone, and to listen with an open mind to new ideas that will help us be the best version of ourselves, seek truth, and be fair. Number 3, the third intention is to improve our critical thinking skills so we can better discern fact from fiction and wisdom from folly. The 4th intention is, once we see the truth more clearly using great critical thinking skills, we want to increase happiness and decrease harm in the world. And then number 5 is an eagerness to give and receive love. And I would argue if all of us just realize that those 5 things unite us across all political backgrounds, religious backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds, like those things are, meaningful, tangible, rules that one can follow in day-to-day life that unite us rather than divide us. And so that's, where they come from, is as a common set of values that we can share as the Freethinker Institute community, to keep us united rather than divided. And I really would like to see more uniting and less dividing, and more of Sean's outrage about the bad stuff that is going on, while we all fight about left and right. There's all kinds of, legalized bribery going on that's taking democracy away from us. It's slipping out of our hands. That said, Ginny, you have your hand up.
Renee and I want to sing a song. Is it
Yeah,
okay to
please
sing a
do.
song?
Yeah, I gotta get the words.
You've got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and latch on to the affirmative. Don't make the, what is it? Don't let the,
That's an old song. That's a goodie.
I know, I love these old
Goodie.
songs. Yeah.
Don't
What?
let the negative.
Huh?
Don't let the negative get you down.
Oh, that's a don't
There you
let
go.
the negative, no. No, you got to accentuate the positive, eliminate the negative, and latch on to the affirmative. Don't let the,
Don't let the
No.
negativity
Right.
bring you down.
Fight
Something like
the-
that.
yeah,
The
anyway,
final
Renee, it's your
line
turn.
is-
Now you gotta sing the second stanza, Renee.
I'm not
But the
prepared.
chorus is that's how you get results.
What is it?
That's how you get results.
There you go.
No,
Well,
no.
Yeah.
Oh,
right,
you got to
sounds like-
accentuate
That's how
the
you get
positive,
results.
eliminate the negative, and latch on to the affirmative. Don't
That's
let
how-
the,
Google it, Ginny.
God darn it.
Google.
I sang that song so many times and all of a sudden I'm
What's the
blanking
name
out.
of
It's
that
too
song?
late.
Oh, that
I
was
gotta
great.
let Garrett
Jenny.
go to bed. Thank you so much, Garrett, for it was a wonderful meeting. Thank you, Ellie. And
Nice meeting y'all.
Thank you, Jenny. Thanks a lot, everybody, for coming. I do
Beautiful,
want to
Jenny.
encourage everyone to come back next
Thank
week.
you.
We are going to talk about a tangible plan to end unjust wars. And then we're also going to talk about how that same plan will drastically reduce human rights violations. It's actually ridiculously simple, and but I think it's actually a functional, doable plan. I just have to try to get it in front of the right people, and would love any advice on how to do that. Although people are welcome to shoot holes in the plan too, and we can patch them up. And then on January 10th, we're going to talk about to vaccinate or not to vaccinate. That is the question of the year in a 100-year global pandemic. So thanks a lot, everybody, for your contributions tonight. Really good conversation. Really enjoyed having everybody here. Thanks for enjoying our blast to the past, from the whole past year. And look forward to seeing new faces again, and good to see old faces again. And hope everybody has a great rest of their evening or day, morning in Australia. Thanks a lot, everyone, for coming, and hope to see
did I
you
miss your
next-
daughters? Did I miss your daughters?
You did. Sorry, she did
Oh,
come.
darn
but
it. I
she got
can't
a
believe I did
custody.
it again. Sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
that's all
sorry.
right.
Okay. Thank
All
you.
right. Take care, everyone.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
I'm going to
Happy
come
New
back
Year,
at the next
everybody.
meeting. I'm going to
Everyone.
come back with that song memorized.
There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah,
There you
go
go. Bring
with
it
the
next time,
song.
Jenny.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.